Okay, so we are ready to make our first totem piece for our ceramic totem, okay? And so there's a few tools and things I want to do to get myself set up. I do have my clay that I've just wedged, okay? This is probably a good amount for that first piece. It's probably good to have a little bit extra. You can always cut off the extra, but if you don't have enough, then that might be a problem later. So this is probably a good piece to start with. There's other things that I might want to have near me. First of all, we're going to need some newspaper. Okay, so you can grab just a bit of newspaper. You're going to need a rolling pin. Okay, and the newspaper and rolling pin are located in the same shelf. And then I might need some of these, and I don't even have a really good name for them. I call these my slab rolling measuring sticks, okay? So grab two. This one is about an inch. Yeah, it's about an inch thick. There's some that are thicker, some that are thinner. I would recommend the ones that are about 1 centimeter, but make sure that you grab two that are the same because we don't want an uneven slab as we roll these out, okay? So that's what we're gonna start with. The other thing that I think is important to think about before you begin is what are the shapes of the totem pieces that you're going to be making, right? We talked about the requirements. So your totem has to be at least 20 centimeters tall, and you have to have at least 2 pieces. Okay, so you might have one taller piece and one smaller piece. You might have 3 pieces, but it has to be at least 20 centimeters and at least 2 pieces. These pieces can look like perfect cylinders. Right? They could be more organic forms. They could be more like a box form. Okay, so you know you've thought about that. Hopefully you have some of those ideas in your mind: how tall, how wide, what the forms are going to be. Okay, so for this demonstration, I'm going to show you a basic cylinder form and maybe how to put some variation into that form once you get going. Okay, so let's get going. The first thing we need to do is know what form about we're going to use. I'm going to actually use this as my mold. Okay, so whatever shape you're going to use, it's helpful to start with a basic inner structure. So this is what I'm going to go for. It's a little bit wider, and so I think that'll be nice. And so one thing I like to do to just kind of gauge how big my clay piece needs to be to wrap around this, I'll grab some scrap paper. Here's a piece of newspaper. I've just really quickly ripped it into about the shape of the Mod Podge bottle. Okay, so I know my clay is going to have to be about this long to wrap around. Okay, so that's just a good thing for me to know as I start to roll out my slab as well. This is about the general shape my clay is going to have to be. Okay, so let's get going with that in mind. So first things first. Again, I know my clay is going to have to be longer than it is wide, so I'm just going to start in my hands and just get that clay kind of in a, I don't know, flatter shape. Okay, so I'm just kind of crunching it, thinning it out slowly. Okay, that's a pretty good start, right? It's starting to flatten out. I have a nice shape, it's a rectangle shape. And now I'm gonna start my rolling process because I want it to be consistent all the way around. So for that, I'm gonna get my newspaper. Okay. Let's just grab a big sheet like this. Let's see how this works. Okay, so I have one full sheet of newspaper, right? I'm gonna fold it in half, and this I would assume would be big enough. I don't think you're gonna make anything bigger than this, okay? So I'm gonna just place my clay right in the center, all right? And I'm gonna put my measuring sticks on both sides, okay? And I'll show you what those do once we get going. So my rolling pin, I'm gonna show you sitting down. I might stand up. I actually like standing up when I do this, just like wedging. I feel like I can get more pressure onto the clay. So I'm actually gonna stand up. What I wanna do is start to just stretch that clay out. And you'll notice when I do this, I'm gonna roll in different directions. Okay, I'm not pushing too hard. I'm just starting to coax that clay out. Okay. So we're gonna keep stretching this out. Now, here's where when my slab gets a little bit thinner, that's where my slab measuring sticks really come in helpful, because if I keep them at a width that's less than my rolling pin, okay? These won't allow my rolling pin to go too far down, right? The edges will touch my rolling pin. So right now it's a little bit raised up, so I know I can keep going. Okay, and I'm getting close now where my rolling pin is touching my measuring stick. So now that's good. Now I know it's a consistent 1 centimeter all the way across. I think you can kind of hear that, right? The rolling pin on the wood. That's good. Okay, so now I know it's consistent all the way top to bottom. Okay, there we go. All right, so now my slab is rolled. It's a 1 centimeter thick slab all the way across. That's great. All right, now my newspaper did get crumpled up a bit. That's not a big deal. All right, we just used the newspaper so it wouldn't stick to the table. So we can pick this up very carefully if we want. We can move it, take away some of that newspaper that got crumpled. We're good to go. Okay, so I have my slab cut. Now I'm gonna be preparing my inner structure, okay? So for that, I'm just gonna grab another piece of newspaper. You only need 1 sheet thickness this time. Okay, and I need to just cover my structure with newspaper. Okay, and I'll explain why once we get to that stage, but I'm just gonna wrap it around. Keep it pretty tight. Okay, and then grab a piece of tape. And that's going to be good. Okay, so I've set up my inner structure here. Okay, so another tool that I like to have with me is this cutting tool. A lot of different cutting tools will work, but this one's pretty good. I already have a nice flat surface here, so I'm going to lay it on my slab and get a nice flat, straight line cut all the way through. This is now extra, okay, it has a little newspaper on there, that's okay, we'll set that aside. Okay, now that's my base, okay, so now I need to determine how tall I want my form to be, my totem form. You can choose, right, like whatever you want, is it this tall, that tall, whatever. So for me, let's just see, I'll choose about that tall. Feels about right. I'm going to try to make that as perpendicular as I can to my first cut. I should probably be more precise and measure, but not this time. There we go. Okay, so now I have a slab, all right, that should be perpendicular. There's newspaper again that's stuck here. That's okay. That's not a big deal. Okay, now to continue to prepare this before we wrap it, okay, I'm going to also cut a flat edge on this side. This will be the inside of my wrapping. Okay, so when I actually cut this, a little trick I like to do is I'm going to cut this at an angle, at a 45-degree angle. Okay, and so if I just cut it flat, when I bring that second piece of clay around to touch it, there's just a lot of clay that's overlapping here. So if I cut it at an angle, I'll have less clay and it'll blend a little bit more nicely. Okay, this doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to cut it at about a 45-degree angle. So we can see that. All right. Now I'm going to be wrapping this around my mold. Okay. Before I go to wrap, one little trick. Okay. You're going to hear me say this a lot throughout the course and when you're time working with clay. But anytime we bring 2 pieces of clay together, we need to do a technique called score and slip. Okay, and all scoring means is that we scratch the surface of the clay that's going to touch. Okay, so I'm going to score this side and score this side. We're going to put it together. I kind of think of it like Velcro sticks together. If we put two pieces of clay that are smooth together, it's a little bit harder for them to grab on. Okay, so we're going to score both sides. So for that, I really like this tool. It's called a serrated rib. It has these little teeth here, but you can use a lot of tools, right? I could use my knife tool and just rough up the edge, but this tool works really well. It's my favorite for scoring. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to scratch this surface because that's where the clay is going to meet on the other end. Okay, so that's scoring. Okay, so here we go. So I'm ready now to wrap. So I'm just going to flip it here and I'll just wrap it this way. Okay, so I'll grab my clay, try to keep it straight, rolling it around. Okay, now here's where measuring is important because I don't want to run out of clay. I think I'm just going to make it there. Okay, so I am pretty good. I have a little excess clay here, right? We can see that. Okay, so what we're going to do is cut that excess clay off. And I'm going to cut again at an angle. Okay, so let's see here. We have this 45-degree angle, right? That's meeting the clay. I'm going to cut this excess clay off like this. So I'm going to try to meet that angle and cut straight down at another angle. Okay, so again, I don't know if you can see that. I've just cut this piece at an angle and it fits that piece at an angle. Okay, so before I push that all the way in, I'm going to give this side a quick score. Okay, so now I have this scored and that's scored. Okay, so that's going to be my Velcro-like attachment. Okay, now, so you heard me say before, score and slip. Okay, so score is the first step. I want to really rough up those edges. The second stage of that is slip. Okay, and so what slip is we have it in these containers. This is just really watered down clay. That's all it is. Okay, and so what this does is it acts like a glue. All right, it's going to really hold those two pieces together. They won't separate after we score and slip. Okay, so to slip, you can use your finger and put it on there if you want. Some people don't really like the feeling of it, so you can maybe just grab a paintbrush is fine too. I don't need a lot. I really don't need a lot at all. So I'm just going to put just a little bit. Okay, really, really little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to bring those two pieces together and give them a nice compression. Really make sure they're well combined. If any extra slip ends up coming out like that, we can just clean that up with your finger, or you can grab a sponge. Okay, and just keep smoothing that out. The idea is that we don't see that seam. Right, that's just kind of hidden. And I keep smoothing and smoothing and smoothing. All right. Okay, so I feel pretty good about that smoothing. Now, really cool part, I can just take my mold out at this point and it just should be okay. So I'm just gonna lift. Whoop, maybe, maybe not. Okay, and now my newspaper I can just twist right out. Okay, and I have my cylinder form. All right, the last stage of this that I'd like to do is on the inside. I don't know if we can see there's that seam. I can still see where those two pieces of clay came together. I'm going to try to smooth that out with my thumb. Okay, so just connect those two pieces together there. All this newspaper, don't really worry about it. It's okay. You can leave it. It will actually, when we put it in the kiln, it will light on fire and burn out, and you'll never know it was there. Okay, so that's a basic form. Now, this would be a cylinder. I'm going to show you in our next video how to put a top and a bottom on this. Okay, but now here's where I would make some choices too. Maybe I want this to be more of a box-like form. I can do that right now. The clay is still soft. All right, so maybe I want to start to create a box. So I just move the clay, start to create some edges. Okay, and I could continue to refine this further, but now I have a box-like form. Okay, maybe I want to do something a little bit more funky, right? I want to make it a little more organic, right? I could do things where I maybe push out, okay, or push in. Really, we could do a lot of different things here. Okay, so this is where we'd really want to alter our form into the shape that we want. Okay, and then like I said, in the next video I'll show you how to put a top and a bottom. We'll continue to look at how we can refine textures and add-ons and things like that to our totem pieces.